Alright, the last thing from Chapter 3 that we're going to look at is 3.1, which is looking at marginal functions, specifically economics, and for the most part we stick to cost, revenue, profit, but I will do an example at the end that I don't have in my guided notes over marginal productivity. You do marginals for any type of function. We don't have to stick to cost, revenue, and profit. We just typically do in this class. Alright, so I will do an example at the end that isn't in my guided notes if you want to look at it. Alright, so hopefully you've watched the MyLab videos to explain the marginal analysis part. Alright, the marginal analysis is the study of economic quantities, specifically looking at how much my economic quantities, and again we stick to mostly cost, revenue, and profit, but again you can look at things like productivity and demand and supply and all of that as well. How much do each one of those quantities increase by approximately when you increase production by 1 unit? All right, again, it's a 1 unit increase in this case, in the basic case. Now, there are what's called differentials, which you can look at differing values than 1, but we keep it simple in this class. We're only going to do the 1 case, where we increase by 1 unit. All right? And so I'm going to start off with my cost. So I'm going to do an example of each. I'm going to do a cost, revenue, profit, and then I'm going to do an additional example of productivity so that you can see something that's not just cost, revenue, and profit. Alright, so starting off with cost, though, suppose that an electronics manufacturer produces MP3 players. They determine the daily cost for producing X of these players is given by that fun cost equation. Find the marginal cost. So marginal cost is the slope, right? It's the change in cost per item. Slope is found using the derivative. And so when I want to find marginal cost, it's just simply the derivative of the cost. And so the derivative of this cost equation is 0.0003x to the second minus 0.16x to the first plus 40. And there's my marginal cost function that finds all my slopes. Slopes are my marginal cost, all right? Increase in my function or decrease. All right, find and interpret the marginal cost when the production is at 200. So again, I want to find my derivative at 200. That'll give me I'm plugging it into this equation I just found. All right, when I plug 200 into that equation, it comes out 20. And then actually the more important part of this is the interpretation. What is marginal analysis? It's the analysis part. What does this tell me? All right, so it's the interpretation. If this were a test question, maybe a point would go for the right answer, but 3 or 4 points would go for your interpretation. Alright, so they're currently producing 200, so that means this is telling me about the next item. And so when they produce the 201st, alright, going from 200 to 201, MP3 player. The cost, all right, the additional cost, or the increase in cost, again, using some form of words where it's going up, right? Cost is moving up. So the additional cost, the increase of cost, right, it is an estimation, so we're adding cost by about $20. Right? So it costs them about $20 more to go from producing 200 items to 201. Right? That one more item, specifically the 201st item, this would be different if I picked a different number, cost them an additional $20 approximately. Alright, so approximate cost for producing 201 items using marginal cost. Alright, so this is again using marginal cost. How much does the 201 items cost? Alright, so it's approximated by, well, I find the cost at 200, which they should know that already. That's their production level. Alright, how much is the 200 items costing them? And then the additional cost is about whatever the derivative is at that level 200, which again, if they're already at that level, they should know what this is. And it's just adding those two values together. So it's the 200. So you go back to the original function. You plug 200 into the original function. And add to it this $20 in additional cost. Alright, so it cost, at $200, it cost them $6,100 to produce 200 MP3s. $20 more to produce the next one. So it's about $6,120 to make 201 MP3 players. All right, approximately. All right, so I use the word about, approximately about. So it cost them about. So it cost them exactly $6,100 to produce 200. To produce 201 is an additional $20 in cost. So to produce 201, it's going to cost them about $6,120. All right, now just to compare how good, again, it is an approximation. Some approximations are better than other approximations. And so what I'm just doing here in Part C is showing you how good or bad of an approximation it is. And I believe this one's a fairly good. So to find the actual change in cost, you would find your cost using the original cost function at 201 minus the cost at 200, and that will give me my actual cost difference, which should be close to 20. Alright, when I plug 201 in, again, I go all the way back and plug it into this original cost equation. That's where I'm plugging it in. It comes out $6,119.98. This was $6,100, and so the difference was $19.98. And so my approximate was pretty close. I approximated that it was a $20 extra fee to produce that 201st item. If somebody were to borrow $19.98, you'd probably round that to 20. So it's a pretty close it's a pretty good approximation. All right. So, and why they would do this is because it's really easy to set up a program to find differentials. All right. And so they know what their cost level is already. To find how much their cost is changing isn't that difficult, and you can do this for a lot of problems. All right. And so again, we keep it fairly basic here. We just do a 1 unit change. But it's a similar process if you have a different unit change than 1 unit. Again, we don't get into that, but it is similar to that. All right, so there's an example of a There's an example of marginal cost, and so then I'll do marginal revenue, I'll do marginal profit, and then a marginal productivity. All right, we'll stop there, and I'll pick up the next example in the next video.